Bearcat fans, welcome to another edition of This Week in Bearcat Athletics. Well, it's homecoming week on the Northwest Missouri State campus with a big football game against Pittsburgh State Saturday. The Northwest Volleyball team has two important matches on the road this weekend, and the cross-country teams both performed well at the MIAA Championships last week. We'll have more on all that coming up on This Week in Bearcat Athletics.
The Bearcat football team more than doubled Lindenwood's offensive output last week in a 47-12 win in St. Charles. The Cats picked up 529 yards, including 358 yards through the air, and the Lions had just 261 total yards in their homecoming game. Kyle Zimmerman had a career-high 350 passing yards, the second time he has gone over 300 yards passing in his career. Cass Weidel led the Bearcat defense with 10 tackles, including 1.5 sacks. This week, the Bearcats will face Pittsburgh State in a homecoming game at Bearcat Field. The Gorillas come in with a 5-3 record, including last week's loss to Emporia State at home. All three Gorilla losses have come at home this year. Bearcat head coach Adam Dorrell says statistics and records don't matter in a matchup against Pitt.
Well, I think the first thing you got to be a little bit careful of is looking at the statistics because it's Pittsburgh State. That's number one. Number two, they've had a ton of injuries, and I always have a lot of respect for their football program and their coaching staff because you can put on the film and you see they have had a lot of injuries and you don't ever hear them talk about it. So us and them are a lot alike. Next man up, do your best. So we're trying to be a little careful of that because maybe they'll get some of those guys back this week. Our focus is just we have a lot of respect for Pittsburgh State, and I think it starts there. I think you have to respect them as a football program. I think they're very blue-collar, tough, a very, very well-coached football team. And so as far as what you're alluding to, certainly that's there. But to me, it starts with understanding it's going to have to be a very physical football game. We're going to have to execute at a high level. If you start with those two things, I think those things will naturally come. They've shuffled a lot of people from free safety to strong safety to their bandit spot. And so I think that's maybe been a little bit of their issue with some of those yardage.
This week's game will be televised nationally on the American Sports Network. You can log on to BearcatSports.com to find out what affiliates will be carrying this week's game. Kickoff is set for 2:36 Saturday afternoon. The Northwest Missouri State volleyball team has a big weekend in front of them with road matches at Washburn and at Emporia State. The Cats enter the week in a tie with Central Oklahoma for third in the MIAA, a half game behind Washburn and 2 behind Nebraska Kearney. The Cats lost a close 5-set match against Washburn at home earlier in the season, and head coach Amy Worth says they learned what they need to do this time around from the first meeting.
I just think how much we need to take care of the ball a little bit more. Not a ton. I mean, when you look at the unforced errors, what it really came down to, it came down to 2 points. But when you look further into the stats, you'll see that they had 14% errors when it came to their hitting side, and we had 20. So we had more kills than they did. And a lot of the ways you look through that stat sheet, and we're beating them when it comes to a lot of the stats because of the higher stats. But some of the stats you want to be lower. And one of those areas is you want to have your ratio between your hitting errors and what you're doing with your attempts. And so that's the biggest piece that I feel like led to their victory is they just took care of the ball just a little bit better than we did. And so from our side, just mentioning things, like we don't spend a lot of time on it, but just when you're in certain situations, you got to take care of the ball. And when you're in other certain situations, you got to be aggressive. But just kind of understanding those situations a little bit better, I think this time through will help us a lot.
The Bearcats will follow up Friday's match at Washburn with a meeting at Emporia State Saturday. After this weekend, the Cats will play their last 5 matches of the regular season at home. There were several Northwest Missouri State cross-country runners that earned all MIAA honors last weekend at the conference meet in Elsa, Illinois. The men took second as a team, with Braden Clues-Proctor taking second individually, Nolan Zimmer fourth, and Wick Cunningham sixth. Missouri Southern won the men's side. Sammy Lorenzo earned all MIAA in the women's race, taking 10th individually, running a personal best 22:13. The women finished 10th as a team. Next up for both teams will be the Central Region Championships November 5th in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. The Bearcat women's soccer team closed out the home portion of its schedule with a pair of losses last weekend. The Cats dropped a 1-0 decision to Emporia State last Friday and a 2-0 decision to Washburn Sunday. This Friday and Sunday, Northwest will play at Missouri Western and Lindenwood to try to close out the season on a positive note. That's This Week in Bearcat Athletics. For producer Andrew Sherry, I'm Matt Porter.